I may not be the hero you ordered online, but I am the one that was FedExed to your house. Hello, and welcome to Drag Me to Adulthood, a drag and lifestyle variety show where we help you discover your adulting superpowers. I'm your host, Emma Eagle. Okay, so I'm just going to be straight with you. Wait, that's not right. I'm going to be honest. The year 2020 started out a little bit rough for me, and I think it started out rough for a lot of people. Because of this, I decided to make this episode about comfort food. And when I think of comfort food, I think of my great-grandmother's old recipe for chicken and noodle stew. This episode will actually be very useful because we're going over some very basic things like making homemade egg noodles, how to cook them, and creating a very basic stew from chicken broth. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, to make the noodles, we're going to start with 3 eggs and 3 generous pinches of salt. We're going to mix that together until they're fully combined. This next step you can completely skip, but my great-grandmother always added a teaspoon of heavy cream. We're pretty sure it doesn't do anything, but I'm doing this in her honor. Now we're going to put about a cup of flour into a bowl, or you can do this directly on your cutting board. We're going to create a well in the center of the flour and pour our eggs into that. Then we're going to gradually stir that in with a fork until this mixture comes together to form a sticky dough. When the dough becomes difficult to stir, go ahead and start kneading it with your hands. You'll notice here that the dough is still very sticky when I press into it, so we're going to add another cup of flour. Make sure this is all-purpose flour. Other kinds of flour, like bread flours and cake flours, will all hydrate differently, and this recipe is for all-purpose flour. Fold and knead the flour into the dough. The longer you work the dough, the more resilient the noodles will be. So if you want a more delicate noodle, your goal is to knead the dough as little as possible. I personally prefer my noodles to be a little bit more strong so that they'll hold up under the boiling water. So I knead my dough quite a bit to build up the gluten. The dough will feel like very dense modeling clay. Now we're going to roll the dough out. Be sure to flour your rolling pin. Flip the dough and rotate it frequently in order to get a very even layer. Now we're going to take a long knife and we're going to flour it and we're going to cut the dough. Here you have a lot of different options. If you would like, you can cut the noodles into very, very fine pieces. I like my noodles to almost be like a dumpling, so I cut them pretty thick, and when they hit the water, they're going to expand quite a bit as well. Now, some people will leave these out to dry for 4 hours up until overnight. If you decide to leave them out, I recommend putting them on either newspaper or parchment paper and making sure that they're flat and that they're not bunched together, but you can completely skip this step if you want and put the noodles into the boiling water as soon as you've made them. Go ahead and toss them in a little bit more flour to make sure that they don't stick together. Use a sieve to take off any excess flour, and there you have it, fresh egg noodles. So we're not going to spend too much time on how to peel and cut potatoes, but I thought it was worth mentioning. So first you want to pick a peeler. I personally prefer an elongated peeler. I find that it works better in my hand. These peelers work just as well. The kind of peeler you use is totally up to you. It depends on what you're most comfortable with. Some people will use these peelers this way, where they brace the potato with their thumb. For potatoes, I try to grab them around the center. Don't place a finger on the top though, because you'll likely cut it, and then peel away from you. This can get a little bit messy. Some people peel potatoes directly over the trash can. I find that sometimes this can cause issues. Sometimes you'll drop the potato in the trash can, so I recommend peeling over a cutting board. That way you can just remove the cutting board at the end and scrape off the peelings. For this particular stew, we want large chunks of potato. So we're going to cut these at about 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch. To do this, we're going to cut them the long way and then cut 3 to 4 times to create our diced potato. We want all of the potatoes to be approximately the same size, just to ensure that they'll all cook at the same rate.
Help me.
We're going to use the same Dutch oven that we will make the stew in to cook the chicken. We're going to start by preheating it over a medium to medium-high heat, adding a healthy amount of olive oil and a little bit of butter. Allow that to come up to temperature. The water in the butter will cause the oil to sizzle. That's how you know it's hot. Be sure to use a towel or hot pad to grab the handles. I'm using 3 pieces of chicken breast that I have salted and peppered. If you don't want to cook your own chicken breast, you can also just get store-bought rotisserie chicken and take it off the bone and use it the exact same way. I'm going to cover those. Be sure to lift the lid away from you so that the steam doesn't go into your face. I turn these at about 5 minutes. Be careful when you use metal equipment, like these tongs, on enameled cookware, especially when it's hot. The enamel is very fragile. We're going to leave these for about another 5 minutes and then turn again. In total, I let these go for about 15 minutes. You're wanting to check to make sure that the chicken is firmed up nicely. I could have pulled these a little bit sooner. They did come out a little overdone, but for a stew, they're pretty good. When the chicken's done, take it out of the pan and pour the excess olive oil over it. You'll be left with some fats on the bottom of the pan. Go ahead and add a pat of butter to start to deglaze the pan, and use a wooden tool to scrape up all of the brown bits on the bottom. Now we're going to add 2 32-ounce containers of chicken broth. We're also going to add 32 ounces of water because a little bit's going to cook off. This recipe is all about timing. We have to think about how long each individual component is going to take to cook. For example, the noodles are going to take the longest because they're very dense and take a long time to boil. The potatoes also will take a little bit of time in order to get them soft. The chicken is already pre-cooked, so we don't need to worry about adding that until the very end. I've brought the chicken broth up to a boil over a medium-high heat. I've also separated all of the noodles and laid them out flat. I've sprinkled them with a little bit of extra flour, and they've been drying for about 2 hours. Again, you can completely skip this. The noodles can go directly into the water as soon as you make them. We're going to add the noodles one by one. When you have them all added, go ahead and stir the pot to make sure that none of the noodles are sticking together. So I'm going to cook these uncovered, stirring occasionally for about 50 minutes to an hour. You'll know the noodles are done when you cut into them and the core in the center is almost completely cooked all the way through. Of course, if you have cut your noodles smaller, they will take less time. After about 50 minutes, I'm going to add the potatoes. I don't even know how many potatoes this is. This is way too many potatoes. I shouldn't have put all these potatoes in here, but my potatoes were about to go bad, so I figured I'd use those potatoes and put the potatoes into the stew. Cover and turn down to a medium heat or about a simmer. We're going to let these go for 20 to 30 minutes or until you can easily insert a fork into the center of the potato. At this point in the cooking process, the stew is pretty much finished. We just need to add the chicken. Here you can see I've shredded the chicken and tossed it in the olive oil. We're going to fold it in. You can see it's quite thick because of all the starch we've built up from the noodles and potatoes. This is normal. You can actually add a little bit of water if you would like. Here I'm just testing it to make sure that I like the flavor. So we're going to add some black pepper, a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder, a little bit of dried oregano, and that's it. I tend to season the stew at the very end, which I know sounds a bit unorthodox, but that's because I want all of the spices to be very, very prominent in the final dish. If you allow them to cook in this mixture, I find that sometimes the amount of starch in this stew will overwhelm the spices. Stir to fully incorporate and serve. This stew will keep well in the refrigerator for about 5 to 7 days. When you reheat this stew in the microwave, I recommend adding 1/4 to 1/2 cup of water and microwave it at 1-minute intervals, stirring in between in order to evenly distribute the heat. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what other topics I should cover. Until next time, please remember to use your powers for good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to travel to Wakanda. My vibranium's been on the fritz, and Shuri is the only one who can fix it. So I'll be on my way. But I am the one that... Shucks, I was feeling so good. This hair. The year... And let me know what other topics I should cover in the and let me know... Why did I forget my outro? Why is my wig just so bad today? If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I hate myself. Okay. I have a cat in the frame. I'm gonna have to edit all of this out. I'm kind of in the middle of something right now, Cleopatra. Do you want to... Can we talk later about this?